have 2 minutes left? Okay. Sounds good. What? Yeah. Yes, I do. 100% of it. Yep. Correct.
Just email me, Karina.
Okay.
You're on.
I didn't even know that, I thought we weren't allowed to do that.
No, you can waive it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've waived 100% of it.
I always forget about it, and then I'm like, what is this?
It takes me like 2 days to figure out what it is, you know?
Did he put you in another tax bracket?
All right, is everybody good? Huh? Live on YouTube. Alex, you're good? Greg, you're good?
Recording in progress.
Okay, now we are on to the public portion of the regular Township Committee meeting on June 27, 2023. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, okay, so, oh, sorry. We are going to move to our, let's get onto the approval of the agenda. Does anybody want to take anything out of the consent agenda? Okay, can I get?
Yes, I do. I do. You want to go ahead, Mark? Mike? I'd like to take out numbers 1, 4, 6, 7, 11, 21, 22.
Mike, did you want to take anything out? Okay. And, okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with those resolutions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call? Or all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now go to committee reports. Committeeman Choi, do you have any reports you want to give?
Just a brief update, just a couple public service announcements with regard to Public Works. A friendly reminder that we've got Shunpike restrooms that are now open for those patrons.
Put your microphone on.
Do I need to repeat everything? Yeah, so a quick briefing with regard to Public Works. We've got Shunpike restrooms, which have now been open for a meaningful period of time. It's a wonderful amenity to the fields. Would like to just remind all residents and those patrons using Shunpike Field to just be mindful of the bathrooms. DPW is reporting to me that rocks are being thrown into the toilet and causing undue repairs that I think can be easily avoided if we're just being a little bit more mindful of the public facilities. On the matter of recycling, another public service announcement to break down cardboard and not use plastic bags for disposing recyclable materials. It is an ongoing issue, and I believe MUA may be withholding the pickup of it at some point in the future. So just a friendly reminder on that. On recreation, I was informed that the upper court at Colony was striped for pickleball. So one of the things that we're trying to do is introduce the sport as a amenity to the township and its residents. And I think that will be coming online in the not too distant future. So we're rather excited about that event. And that's all.
Thank you, Committeewoman Ewald.
Thank you.
Could I ask my question?
Sure.
Yes.
Public Works, obviously, there's been a ton of paving going on and people I cross paths with ask me about it. Is there anything significant or big additionally coming down the pike that people need to know about, or are we kind of through it at this point, as far as we know?
Excellent question, because there was a rather extensive recent road paving project that just underway. I do not know. I did not, that topic was not brought up in my sort of regular meetings with DPW, but I can certainly
My
inquire.
understanding is that that project was with the county. You know, everything on Shunpike, or not Shunpike, Southern was county related. We still have to do our municipal streets for the summer, which will be, what, another month? After we adopt the resolutions, okay.
I guess it's a good point, though, that it's nowhere near as intrusive.
No,
It's the county
no,
roads,
it's the
like
county
Vermont
roads.
and
Correct.
Redwood and Shunpike, that's Southern that caused the problem.
Correct, yes, the Southern Boulevard was very, I got lots of emails.
I will say, you know, for a project of that scale, it's unavoidable to circumvent all inconveniences, but I think the staging of it was done fantastically. You know, they did the catch paces, and shortly thereafter, they did the macadam, which in terms of timing is probably one of the best I've seen. So I know it was difficult. My wife even lamented about it. Took her 22 minutes to get back home. But like, you know, often you got to break some eggs to make an omelet, and I think in this case, the final product is exceptional. It's a great time to do it during the summer when school's out, especially those roads. So I think it
Yeah.
was very well timed, very well organized, and
We can thank our police who
Yes.
really advocated to make sure that that started after, schools ended. Because nobody wanted that type of traffic while schools were still in session.
Yeah, they do like that. If Mr. Rushke, our engineer, was here, I have a feeling that he would say this is much better timing than in the colder months when the county typically we pave first and the county comes after. And so this is, for the longevity and the durability of that road, a much better outcome for
Yep,
residents
I
also.
think everybody agrees. It's a little inconvenient for a couple days, but well worth it.
All right, Committeewoman Ewald, do you have any reports?
Thank you, yes. And that just prompts me to remind people that the police were great about sending out information about the projects that were going on, but you need to sign up for Act Now, and then you can get that information. So you can go onto the website and sign up for that. The Senior Center, they had a great garden tour, and I want to thank the community for all your support. It was a very successful event. They always have lots of wonderful programs going on. I know there's a 4th of July party that's going on. So for more information to sign up, go onto their website. The Environmental Commission had a great day at the Fishuac. They were talking to residents about how to safely control mosquitoes using mosquito dunks, and fans went outdoors. Given all the rain, is it advisable to you know, look into that? People have had a lot of success with both. Yeah, and you can find information on their Facebook page as well, letting residents know how to use the mosquito dunks. They do have an opening on the Environmental Commission, and they'd love to welcome a new commissioner onto their, or green team member. So if you're interested, please contact Mr. LeConte and to get a leadership form. And in partnership with the DPW, they'll be starting an Adopt a Drain program. Details are to come, but this is something they're pretty excited about. Great way to engage the community. Board of Ed, I will defer to Mr. Shahadi. I could not make that meeting, but he did have an opportunity to meet with them. Our Historical Society sent in their dates. They are going to be open during the summer, July 2nd and August 6th from 2 to 4, and they'll be highlighting maps. And if you haven't seen the collection of maps they have, I definitely encourage you to go. It's amazing to see, you know, to learn all about the township and its history and what it looked like once upon a time. feel bad if I leave anybody out. I think, I think that's everybody. Okay.
Thank you. Committeeman Lois, do you have a report?
Yes, Colony's swim teams, their first meet is tomorrow, so there's still time to join the team if you'd like, and the swim team marches in the 4th of July parade, so that's kind of fun. So if you're interested in the swim team, Colony Pool is still, there's still an opportunity there. For utilities, just that New Jersey American Water offers some small firefighter grants, and I understand that both of our fire departments have applied, so that's good news too.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yeah, the library, as I reported at previous meeting, it signed a contract now with a contractor and is breaking ground. I don't think there's any actual ground being broken, but commencing in the construction renovation project that's going to ultimately start with the first phase of the new teen center that hopefully will be open in the fall. So looking forward to that. They also, with a generous gift from the always generous friends of the library, have installed the first of what are going to be 2 self-service kiosks in the library that allows you to come in and scan your library card and scan books and take out books, one in the regular circulation desk and another in the children's section independently. So it's a good development on those fronts. On public safety, it's the summertime. We discussed the road paving thing, so that was good. And I echo what committee member Ewald said about signing up for the alerts. So maybe if there is a lot of information out there about things like road closures and paving and stuff, but you have to be on the system in order to get those. So you get those on the website. There was unfortunately an unfortunate instance with an attempted burglary in the township recently that fortunately was thwarted, but nobody was arrested, unfortunately, and numerous instances in general surrounding communities with regard to the ongoing auto theft thing. So at all these meetings, I always remind people to be mindful about locking your cars and your homes. And the Board of Health, similar to the Environmental Commission, needs members. So if there's anybody out there who's interested in public health issues, similarly, you can contact Mr. Glatante, and we're always interested in people who want to participate at that level.
Thank you. I'm going to go off on the public safety as well. Recently, Police Chief Tom Miller and myself put out a video on the Chatham Township website where we discussed the devastating impact of overdoses and the life-saving potential of Narcan. Opioids such as prescription medication and illegal drugs are highly addictive and can lead to overdoses. Each year, over 70,000 lives are lost to drug overdoses in the United States, a significant portion of which involve opioids. Chatham Township is not immune to this problem. Narcan, or naloxone, is a drug that can reverse the effects of an opioid overdose within minutes. It works by binding to the same receptors as opioids, blocking their effects and giving emergency medical personnel time to provide further treatment. To ensure preparedness, it is crucial to know how to administer Narcan. It is available as a nasal spray or an injectable form, both of which require immediate follow-up with a call to 911. Increasing public awareness is vital in our fight against opioid overdoses. We encourage pharmacies, schools, and community centers to stock Narcan and provide training on the usage. The New Jersey Overdose Protection Act grants immunity to those who administer Narcan or call 911 in good faith during an overdose situation. As part of our commitment to your safety, Chatham Township is providing free Narcan kits to residents. To request your kit, visit chathamtownship.org. And if you or someone you know is struggling with opioid addiction, help is available. Reach out to a healthcare professional, visit reachnj.gov, or call 1-844-REACH-NJ for assistance. Together, by increasing awareness and access to Narcan, we can save lives and support those affected by opioid addictions. Thank you. So now I'm going to move on to the first hearing of citizens. Currently, the committee meeting room is open to the public, and we look forward to having you join us. Additionally, this meeting is being made available for public participation remotely. If you're watching via Zoom, You may speak during the public comment session by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand, whether in person or online. When you are recognized to speak, please say your name, spell your last name, and give your street number. As a reminder, all public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, we will wait until you finish speaking before responding. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment during the public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions, and written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to the guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. Greg, was there any written comments?
No written comments.
Alrighty. Anybody want to speak?
Good evening, everybody. I am Marty McHugh. I'm sorry about that. Do I need to start again?
You're fine.
Good evening, everybody. I am Marty McHugh of 61 Ormont Road. That's MCHUGH. I want to have a little full disclosure here for anyone that's here in the room that doesn't know or on the airwaves. I am going to be running and put up as a candidate for Township Committee in the fall, so just so everybody is aware of that. I am certainly motivated to get much deeper in the weeds as I look to make that run or attempt. And so some of the subjects of importance have come to me, and that is really why I'm here. I'm not really nothing political. What I wish to bring to the attention of the committee is to try to help initiate a fix on what many may see as not even being broken. What I mean by that, it is something that I don't think we should wait for until next year to introduce, so I think it's something we might want to jump on earlier rather than later. I think the opportunity has limited realistic availability and be pursued now. The Finance Subcommittee and, of course, our administrator, Mr. Z, our professional CFO, Deborah King, did obviously a wonderful job putting together the budget, and a budget that the majority of the committee could approve. Of course, the budget has no increase in tax rates. However, just like prior years, the budget actually is larger every year in subsequent years, which is no surprise. Incrementally, it grows and grows and grows. Simply put, we collectively almost always spend more the next year and the next year and the next year. So in aggregate, that's an important thing to understand, because this leads to a simple question. Do we continue to increase the planned revenues based, what I believe is primarily or significantly relying on an increase in the ratables of the town? And what is going to drive the increase in the ratables is a continuing push toward the increased ratables. And is that going to impact the character of the town if we continue to make that push? Because it has come to me. Is it sustainable? Certainly a subject for discussion needing much more consideration. However, that's not really my point. I believe there is an opportunity out there. We need to collect what is rightfully ours. What I mean by that is that currently the New Jersey League of Municipalities is pushing for clarity on calculating the utility right-of-ways, and our town has a lot of it based upon population and area, and returns it to us as state aid. I think that's a misnomer. I think it is Chatham Township revenue that is being returned to us, but there's skim by the state. And that is something that I think could drive us now, because the state's in good shape and the state's in a better mood for us to talk to them, whether it be with the League of Municipalities or going alone and figuring it out. So, try to get to the end here. Right now, things are pretty good. Most experts are predicting decline of state revenues in the next few years. So that's important. If and when that happens, it will certainly increase state, what I refer to as skim, of what is rightfully our revenue. I fear it will only become harder in the next several years. So my request is that the committee please address this now, either with a strong support of the League of Municipalities or addressing state aid calculations directly with the state now. So in closing, I remind us all of what one of our past presidents actually said in his State of the Union, and I paraphrase, I believe, but the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. Oh, good timing. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. we'll have the finance committee take a look at that. We reassess every year on how we go about our budget and if we go ahead and move forward accordingly.
If I could,
Yeah, last year we did pass a resolution supporting the energy tax credits and having to do with statements made directly by the New Jersey League of Municipalities. So we have supported them last year, and it was unanimous among the committee.
and I just wanted to update, when I went to the last League of Municipalities meeting, they did talk about, they've been talking about getting our energy tax receipts back for a long time, and this is where they seem more optimistic than ever, because the state is in a good position, because there are certain parameters that have been met. I don't know if Mr. Shahadi can share kind of his perspective, because he's really looped in, so, yeah, now's a good time, and I would support, if we wanted to introduce another resolution, just to kind of, to put some kind of backing behind our interest in reclaiming those funds. Mr. Shahadi, do you have any
Okay.
perspective in terms of what you're hearing on the street?
No, I mean, I've served on the legislative committee for the League of Municipalities for years and served, as legislative staff, and it's been a recurring issue for years. They just kind of rename it, they've, recategorize it. It's been a position of the league for many years. I know also Mayor Mirnov over in East Windsor is also taking that mantle up quite aggressively. It's really going to come down to the will of our legislators, I think, to craft that in their budget to kind of shift more of that to the municipalities.
But that sounds like an issue in Trenton that we can't really, there's not much that we can really,
Yeah, I mean, we
You
can
know,
advocate.
we can
as,
advocate to
by
rep-
way of resolutions, and certainly we could discuss that,
Right.
in finance committee and or whatever other workshop and such. But I don't think it can hurt Chatham. It can only help Chatham, and we just need to get the legislators on board.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? All right, then I will move to close the hearing of citizens and move on to ordinance 2023-06, amending towing fees. So first, I do a public hearing of citizens on this ordinance. Anybody want to speak? Because I don't want to read the whole thing again. No hands raised? All right, nobody wants to speak on the amending towing fees. Can I get a motion to adopt?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, move to a roll call.
Mr. Choi?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
And Mayor Felice?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we're moving to the introduction of ordinances. So ordinance 2023-07, this is our capital ordinance. Can I get a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Is there a second? Anyone?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Trying to find the ordinance.
Should be for the beginning.
Sorry, which one?
007. Yeah, I think it would be, it's near the front of the packet, like about 4 pages in.
Perhaps my understanding of how the capital budget is working is fragmented. The determination on these particular items and the monies, dedicating monies to spend on these particular items is done generally at which point? Was this done in the prior fiscal year? And then it just it comes in?
No, this was done in our finance committee. We met and discussed these.
And then it's brought to the committee at large at what point?
Now.
Like right now?
Yes.
Okay, so for those who are not on the finance committee, how are we to discern these? if it's just brought to my, the other committee folks' attention the day of the vote.
So this is the introduction in terms of the procedure.
Right.
It's the introduction, and then there's gonna be a public hearing, and at that time, there'll be a vote. When would the, July 18th, the next meeting? So there is some time to go through, some of the details, although I guess if it materially changes. But you're right, I mean, you would
But then-
otherwise reach out when you get the information, you could reach out.
Yeah, I mean, it was sent in the packet on Friday.
Right.
And it was meant for, we have this time from now until July before we actually adopt it. This is just the introduction.
Okay.
If I may, Mayor, also, I just want to clarify that most of, the bulk of this list, with minor deviations here and there, I think I emailed both of you on this, a couple thousand deviation here and there is also, for this year, staying in line with the capital improvement plan that was put in the budget. So, when we did the introduction and the adoption of the budget, we put in there a capital plan, and it's a multi-year capital plan, and, beyond year one, those are all just sort of, an outline of vague but moving and flexible outline of our capital plan, because that's what's really only required at that point. But for this year, we tried to be as accurate as we possibly could, and then we stayed true for the most part, except for a couple thousand deviation here and there, to that capital plan for this year. As far as what was outlined in there, but, we tried to also provide as much information in the ordinance as to what's being used. But I'm happy to answer questions on those if the mayor is fine with it, but, or the finance committee could address those too.
When you say here and there, the deviations, and I agree, that's not a big deal, but so in the capital budget, these rough numbers were assigned to like the subheadings, like police, fire.
Correct.
Okay, and then I presume we get input from the chiefs and various people in deciding on specific things, like
Correct.
SUVs or
Yeah, so I tried to get that information early in the budget process, so that way it could be in the capital plan. But, there were still more details, things like, okay, go double check this quote, go see if there's alternatives, talk to John Reschke, if we can move or change things around. So the deviations in this, what I'm referring to is more of, more accurate cost estimates.
Yeah,
It was, I'll pull up the email, but it was, I think, a couple thousand on the police vehicle line, it went up or went down, and then the other shift was on the, the firefighter, volunteer fire departments, and that's for the grant, because we had a match. So we had tested that we would match funds as part of that grant. If they got it, we got it, so we gotta have the money for that. The building improvements, in the capital improvement plan, these were listed under DPW. But I had Debbie and our bond counsel categorize them as building improvements rather than just assign them to one particular department. So in the capital plan, it said DPW. Here they're listed as building improvements. I think that went up a couple thousand. And then roads and sidewalks, that was based on the engineering list that John Reschke had provided, I think, earlier this month. And so it was a ballpark, 500,000. Obviously, you get the co-op prices and more exact numbers. And if we have the ability to pave more roads with that, great. We did get a grant for ADA improvements on sidewalks and crosswalks along Fairmount, and so we did a walkthrough with the police chief and John and DPW, and there were some additional adjustments that we felt might need to be made to improve that. And so these can go to that if there is, excess.
got it.
So my question was more a matter of process. So should it be my expectation as a matter of process that one would learn of these things the day the ordinance is up for vote, and sometime thereafter, then the opportunity to analyze?
We're not,
For introduction.
there's a difference, yeah.
Right.
There's a difference. We're
The only
just
one I'm
introducing-
aware of was the DPW, and that's because I'm on that committee and I meet with them. Everything else is like news to me.
Technically, it'd be the Friday before the
Okay.
meeting when it was up
Right.
for introduction, but then you have from now until we actually vote on it
To review it, to ask questions, to meet with any of our staff,
Okay.
to answer any of your questions and so forth.
But
Basically, it was designed with, the finance committee put it together. and then we presented it, this is our presentation of it to the public.
Right.
If you're, you know, if you're cool with the introduction of it, unless if there's a major change that you want added or changed, we would do that. And then you would have until the actual adoption in July.
Okay.
And then.
I had inquired some time ago about the 800,000 allocation in the capital plan. So it was answered that, and that's what this is now, I'm learning is. But I'd asked sometime before, I said, is there anything specific assigned to that 800,000? And my understanding was no, not at the time the budget was being created. And it was effectively a placeholder at which later time projects would then get dropped in. Is that not a correct understanding on my part?
So the 800 was based off of what was in the capital plan and the budget. So there were specifics in there, but those were subject to change come the introduction of the ordinance. So the budget has a sheet in there with, you know, the capital plan, and between then and this introduction, that's where we fleshed out exactly what can fit into that 800, or if we wanted to go more, theoretically, you could do more than $800,000, but that would have to be borrowed at that point. So rather than borrowing additional funds, we worked within the budget, fine-tune that, you know, capital plan, and then said, hey, we can make this work with the amount that's in our capital improvement fund. So that 800 was the capital improvement fund that we budgeted for. That's essentially cash without having to borrow.
Right, so that allocation was done before you actually know what was gonna be assigned to the 800,000, is that correct?
That's what came from the capital plan that was in the budget.
Right,
But it was roughly allocated, like
Correct,
you
it
said
was
before.
roughly
Yeah.
It wasn't allocated like 2 SUVs, but it was allocated, right, roughly 120 to police and 60-something to fire.
Right.
In general terms like that, I think.
Correct.
And then you're gonna get another bite at it when it goes to bid, there's gonna be resolutions, contracts, so you'll review the group.
yeah, I understand that, I'm just trying to understand the process, and so the further downstream I intervene, if I need to intervene, is less effective. So I'm trying to understand when further upstream, one might be able to intervene if one needs to. Do you follow?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
And there's not a good enough process, and I think we
Yeah,
should.
the
yeah.
answers I'm getting, to be fair, I think I understand what's going on, but it's not even,
Yeah,
all
I think
good.
it would be reasonable to put the capital planning as one of the workshop meetings. We don't do that. It's, you know, it's very, it comes from the staff, so they know what's going on day to day. It comes from them, but also comes from the recreation committee, you know, all the different committees are coming in and saying what they're, and it comes through discussions here from the residents. So it's all, and then it's whittled down to this plan. But, you know, I have the opportunity, I say, you know, we know we're gonna do Shumpike. Where's Shumpike on the plan? Is that, you know, 3 years out, how is that mapped out? Yesterday, I know was on the plan. Where is that mapped out? But these are conversations that we should have as a group. So I think, you know, maybe going forward, if we can plan workshop in advance of all this, so we can all kind of hash through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was the first capital planning session that, you know, I've had as far as an administration for the next couple of years. So when we received these, you know, up until this document, we were just living by essentially what we could cobble together from had been done under my predecessor. So we've been working on the spreadsheet that the finance committee saw, trying to nail that down. Essentially, once we're done with this, we can start talking about 24, 25, 26, 27, because we'll have that outline to start doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we can start in September when we start having our full workshop meetings and start actually discussing a plan for next year. So we don't, you know, so you don't feel rushed or anything, like that
But
wasn't the
this
plan.
process
This,
is fairly new.
Yes.
And even Debbie tells me, the department heads, and I asked them, they were not involved in the capital planning to this level.
I don't think the-
And so, this is a new process that I've instituted to try and get to your point, Committeeman Choi, to have that kind of a roadmap and then be able to have a deliberative discussion on that.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, we want it to be as collaborative as possible. That's what we've always, you know, tried to do. And I think we've been working our way to start that. I think, you know, we've seen the details of it on the finance committee, and we've been, you know, we've met, 4 or 5 times discussing various aspects of the budget, the capital plan, et cetera. But it can't, you know, it's always great to have everybody's input, and I think at least this year we are able to have the input of our department heads, which is the first that we've had, so. Does that answer?
Okay, yeah, to close, I would welcome those changes, yeah.
What changes?
Of the suggestions of, yeah, maybe
Oh, okay.
making it a, yeah,
A process changes.
Process change, not to the actual,
a process change. yeah,
got it,
process.
okay. Yeah. Okay, just making sure everybody's good. Okay, any other,
Yes, I have a bunch to say about this. This capital ordinance is, you know, it hits various areas, and roads and sidewalks are a big thing there, and residents touch and feel those. That's something that every resident sees as a result of municipal government. But another big thing that everyone sees as a result of municipal government is recreation. And we can kind of talk about this capital budget and this capital ordinance and say, you know, maybe $1 should be moved here, $1 should be moved there, but the bottom line is, I don't think anyone thinks $0 is the right amount to be spending on recreation. And that's what this capital ordinance has, is $0. And we could talk about the future, but this year, there should be some capital spend on recreation. Now, it has been said that we can spend more if we're willing to borrow. So we could do that with this ordinance. Between now and next session, we could certainly do that. I'm not a big fan of borrowing money or creating debt, but that's certainly an option. One way to fund this that would be inside the budget, would not cause any tax increase. Another way to do that would be to, in the capital plan, you just use another column, and it's basically the open space budget. And I know that there's some hand wringing and back and forth on that, but the open space funds are allocated to make improvements to our fields and facilities for recreation, our open space, active and passive spaces. I think that would be very appropriate. So that's two sources. And then there's a third source, which we're using in the WPC capital ordinance, which is the Water Pollution Control Plant's capital ordinance, which will be up next. And that's capital surplus. We can use capital surplus in here. And I will give you, I would be an advocate for that in this case. Capital surplus would not require an increase in the tax rate. It wouldn't incur any more debt to our township. And we would simply use capital surplus. Last year, we generated, due to the refinancing of the debt, we generated over $340,000 in capital surplus. So instead of using that for recreation or something else that would be an investment, what we do with those with that capital surplus, you could find it on the page of revenues with the budgeting, we inject it as revenue. So we issue debt, then we inject it year by year, top line of the budget, or what I would call the top line of the budget, as revenue. And we did that with $70,000 of revenue this year. So, and we do that over time. And so what we do is we're gonna issue debt and then work it down as revenue. So this is not the efficient or best practice. Instead, what an efficient manager, if it was your home or if you were a manager in a business, is you look to make capital investments or issue debt to make capital investments that are going to pay back or have some kind of return, whether it be efficiency or just enjoyment and improvement. You wouldn't issue debt, you wouldn't take a loan just so you can pay your ongoing bills. You need to, it's injecting it into the operating budget is just not a good idea in my view. So anyway, this $340,000 in capital surplus would certainly be another source of how we could fund a portion of our capital budget as recreation with zero tax increase, with and you know, be in line with all the rules here. And then the next option would be our unexpended capital ordinances. Now, while we couldn't just unexpend a capital ordinance and then inject the cash directly, we couldn't do that. While we couldn't cancel an unexpended capital ordinance, while we couldn't do that. So in other words, projects that are completed, the money is, there's some money left over in a capital ordinance that's already been established in the past. We have many of these that are open. They're used to pay off various resolutions that we have here tonight. But we are allowed to cancel those capital ordinances and then take that money back, and basically feeds fund balance. So if you wanted to feel better about feeding the fund balance, we could simply appropriate money from or take money from the fund balance, especially this capital surplus, and then we could simultaneously and judiciously cancel some capital ordinances to replenish that fund balance, if that replenishment was a concern for you on this committee. Now, I had tried to show earlier that we are running ahead of plan in several areas, and one of them was interest on investments. Interest on investments are budgeted at $44,000, and we are, I believe the number was about 230% ahead at this point of plan. And if we moved those investments, if we move to get interest on investments, I think we'd be in a very good shape to replenish our fund balance. So if you're concerned about fund balance, there's many ways to skin that cat. There's many things that we could go after. But using either fund balance, open space, unexpended capital ordinances, or debt, or any combination thereof, we could use that to fund a recreation capital improvement. I think that we can all agree that setting recreation capital spend this year at 0 is not a good idea. And one of the arguments I'll give you for that is, if you look at our last resolution tonight, awarding contract for Colony Pool tennis improvements, there's a capital improvement that's been, we've been working on that for about a year, and we are still in the bidding phase, and we're looking to award now. That's great that we're looking to award, but this will give you an idea. A repair of tennis courts could take a year to resolve and bid, and then the work still has to get done after that. So I don't believe that we should be waiting until next year or 2 years or 3 years to make some capital improvements. And I think we have the funds available to us in various ways and in various mix so that we can do that. I think the other thing, or the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say that to make this change tonight in this introduction would be very simple. And it would read the same as our capital ordinance for the WPC. We would just add the same line, and we would add it to, section 2 here. So I'm gonna move that we add to section 2 of this ordinance, right after it, where it says the sum of $805,000 is appropriated from the capital improvement fund of the township to the payment of the cost of said purposes. The sum of $340,000 is appropriated from the capital fund balance of the township. And we should just put in recreation at an amount of $340,000. And I think that's a reasonable sum to use for recreation.
Anybody else have any discussion? Anyone?
Not sure where to begin on that.
Well, I think you made a motion.
Well, we already have a motion on the table that was to introduce this ordinance.
You can make a motion inside of a motion.
There was no second. So we ignored it.
That's why I brought it up,
Yeah, so
Now I think we should continue
Right.
with what was on the table.
the discussion. Did you?
Yeah, I'm kind of a little stunned. We have, you said yourself, we have $170,000 for Colony tennis courts. So even though it's not planned in here, it has been planned, and some of those, I think in order to fund that, we have monies that were set aside previously, but you also are pulling from capital ordinances to fund those tennis courts. That we take care of under our operating budget, we take care of our fields and our parks and our playgrounds. I guess I'm wondering what you want to spend $340,000 on without having any discussion. Do you have like some pet project that you're planning on spending
No, I had said that, you know,
$340,000?
whatever the amount
Wait,
is,
wait, wait.
I think over zero is what we could agree to. And if you want to revise it, I could do that. If you wanted to say, hey, Mark, I think it should be 120, you know, that's a discussion we can have. But zero, nothing,
Okay.
that's the question.
We're letting Stacy have the floor right now.
I think she was finished.
Are you done?
She asked a question and
Oh.
Mark was responding, but I think her question was premised on the, you know, I think you used the word semantical earlier tonight, Mark, you know, the idea that the budget that was adopted for this year has no money for recreation in it is false, entirely inaccurate. And I just think that that needs to be true. That, you know, I'm not necessarily against some of these ideas. I don't think this committee meeting and the public discussion on adopting this ordinance that has been introduced is necessarily the time and place for off-the-cuff, on-the-fly addition to, you know, almost 50% increase in the amount of capital. But I'm open to those discussions for sure. But I'm not sure this is the time and place for it. And I strongly disagree that this committee has adopted a budget that provides zero for recreation, just to be perfectly.
Well, I didn't say that. I
Absolutely.
said zero capital. The police department clearly is funded completely, but there is capital for the police department here of $120,000. What I'm saying is that, of course, recreation has been funded in various ways. We have a recreation director, that we have maintenance of the fields. But capital, I'm saying capital improvements, things that create upgrades and improvements, is zero. And
Okay.
I don't think that
That-
anyone agrees with zero for a capital budget. That's what we're talking about, capital.
Okay, this ordinance does not mean that $0 is being spent on recreation, the capital recreation. It does not preclude spending from open space funds or on capital improvements. The unexpected capital ordinance is what we're also using for recreation expenses, which is why they're not on here. Additionally, we have been undergoing an extensive review process of our facilities and doing the financial due diligence to prioritize the needed recreational improvements. So,
I just want to make another comment. The
Mhm.
notion of taking money to the fund, from the fund balance to fund something that we don't even know what it is, on the basis of interest, what was the interest? $48,000, so we're over some large percentage, and because it's $48,000. Our UCC fees are budgeted at $600,000, and we're behind on that number, and we have Dixie-Dale, which has largely come through. So I'm looking at that number, because I'm worried our revenue is gonna be down. So this guessing game based on 48,000 in interest, and that's just, my memory might be off on that one, but I don't think we should be making calls, and we certainly need to get counsel from our CFO and from our administrator on whether or not we're gonna start taking money from fund balances on some unknown pet project.
Well, many of them are not unknown, so there's,
okay, we've
there are,
gone back and
there are
forth too many
resolutions.
times. We've had the floor
Mr.
multiple
Choi,
times.
Mr. Choi is allowed to ask questions and move forward, and then there's some back and forth, and I think I deserve at least
Do
the
we
same
want
courtesy.
to look at the time spent on each, like, you've had your time.
Well,
You
I
made your
guess that's,
points. When
no-
we go around in circles,
no,
that's when I
but
go
the
to a
assertion,
vote.
there's not this is not a circle, because this is something directly addressing the idea that there is no budgeting or no sense of what we should be spending this capital on, the recreation capital. We've already not only sent out a resolution, we not only made a resolution, but confirmed the purchase of netting at Mountain View. That purchase of netting at Mountain View cannot be placed on open space because we can't do that. We can't activate an entire field. We know the amount. We had gotten bids from GM Fence, and we cannot move forward with that because there's no way to fund that from open space. It's not part of the Rossi, right? So that field, that example, is something that not only did we issue a resolution saying, yes, bid this, not only did we receive bids, but we received, we also issued a resolution confirming the purchase order, and we still haven't moved forward on that, and that's a definitive amount of money. I think it was $48,000. We could look it up. But there are several examples of things. There's a foul ball netting that we should have installed at Nash, that we passed a resolution that foul ball netting should be up. So there are many things that are clearly defined and that we have passed resolutions, not just in the subcommittee or something that Mike and I did or that I did by myself, and I'm sorry for inducing you there, Mr. Choi, that wasn't correct. But it's not something that, is being done as a lone ranger. This is something that's passed this committee and goes unfunded. I think that the people of this township would want to see some capital afforded to recreation, especially projects we've already clearly defined and costed.
All right, all right.
Can I ask a question?
This is getting ridiculous.
Can I ask Mr. King a question? Does passing this resolution?
This is introduction to an ordinance.
Well, let's assume it gets introduced, and let's assume it gets adopted. Does that preclude and cut off any spending in any way, restrict our ability to have another, pass something else way, to close the deal on the Mountain View netting or do anything else? No. I didn't think so.
All right, we're going to a vote.
Mr. Choi?
Can we rewind the tape? What are we voting on?
We're voting to
introduce the
introduce
ordinance.
the capital budget,
No.
the capital.
Hold on.
Capital ordinance.
So ordinance 07.
Yes.
07, for introduction to be
Yes.
later
To be
considered over
correct.
the next month.
Yes. 07.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mr. Lois?
I'd ask that people remain available for revisions, but yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
And Mayor Flees?
Yes.
Motion passes. Public hearing will be on July 18th.
All right, we're moving on to ordinance 2023-08, the WPC capital ordinance. Is there a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And discussion? No discussion, then we can go.
I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, which is that we are using capital fund balance in this ordinance, so we are using the sum of $240,000 in payment of the sewer utilities capital fund balance to the payment of said cost. This is a very normal and unusual thing to do, and it's something that the committee really should consider using for the previous ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to a vote?
Mr. Choi?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
And Mayor Flees?
Yes.
Motion passes, and the public hearing will be on July 18th.
Okay, now we're going to go to the consent agenda. So can I get a motion to adopt, let's see, resolutions 128, 129, 131, 134, 135, 136, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, and 146.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a roll call?
Mr. Choi?
Yes.
Mrs. Flees?
Felice.
Mrs. Ewald.
Yes.
Sorry, like I said, I'm getting new glasses soon. Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
It's subject only to, maybe I should have pulled it out, but, best wishes to Sergeant Blanford on his retirement, and he'll be missed, yes.
And Mayor Flees?
I echo with Deputy Mayor Hamilton's. So yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now, could I get a motion to adopt resolution 2023-127, payment of bills?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And discussion?
Okay, I asked for this to be called out. There's a couple of charges on here that I'd like to bring up. Well, the first is, there was charged for opioid postage. It's on the list. It seems to me, I've asked, the project here could be up to $10,000 for the opioid awareness. And there was no resolution to support this, this project. So it was simply announced at a meeting. So $10,000 is outside of our ordinances that allow this to be simply directed without a resolution. So I just want to bring that to this committee's attention that, we have something that's beyond the limit on the bills list.
Steve, do you want to answer
The
that?
individual amount for postage is not beyond the limit.
Correct, the limit is for a contractor or vendor. We don't have any individual contractor vendor in that amount.
Okay.
No, it's called structuring. You cannot simply break something down into its pieces, and it's whatever the initiative is.
No, that's not correct.
Is pushed together.
No, that's not correct.
And we're not talking
That's
about
not correct.
purchasing ordinances. What we're talking about is the authority granted to the
Okay.
administrator.
It's
Committeeman
not
Lois,
correct,
you made
number
your
one.
point.
It's not correct, number one, and it is not exceeding $10,000, so the point is mute.
Okay,
Well, it's
Can we go to a
9,000
vote?
ordinances, and I
Craig?
have an email saying
Mr.
that.
Troy?
I have another question on the bills list. That's not my
Vote has
only
been called
question.
for,
on-
Mr. Troy?
I think Committeeman Lois
The vote's been called for, so we're voting now.
for resolution.
Are you gonna be
127.
run over on a bills list question, just for no reason?
yeah, okay.
Chair, I appeal to you
Oh.
to withdraw the request for vote and allow me just to ask a single other question about the bills list.
Okay, but we're not going into back and forth in arguments is the problem. And you tend to do that. So if you have a single question that you would like to ask, then ask your question. But the argumentative back and forth is where it draws the line. So then they're saying that our professionals and our employees are incorrect and are wrong, that is not, we will have to rely on our professionals and our administration.
Well, you can find it in our ordinances, but I'll let that go. Okay, so at Colony Pool, we've had a speaker replaced. It's in the bills list. It's $400 or so that was spent. We have a 30-year-old system there, essentially replacing the speakers to that system, make it the same system. It's a horn system. There was a vote by the Colony Pool Committee to upgrade that system. There was a resolution passed by this Township Committee to upgrade that system. There is a circulated engineering plans that were obtained for free from Bogan to upgrade that system. There were multiple emails following up on that purchase order. There was a confirmation at one point during a workshop meeting that the upgrade to the speakers at Colony Pool would be made, and there's confirmation by email that I have saying that we would make these this upgrade, and we haven't made an upgrade. And on the bills list, instead I find a charge for $400 for essentially replacing the same 30-year-old system that we have. I'd like to know how that decision was made, given that also on this bills list, the planning board desks were replaced for $5,000 with no vote at the planning board, no resolution before this township committee, and at a much more considerable expense. I want to know how those kind of choices get made when this committee indicates its will and then it's overridden in some other process. I'd like to know how that happens.
Z, do you want to respond to that? Whatever you want to do.
What's the current status of the system replacement that got voted on? I'll confess, I don't specifically remember the vote.
So there was a meeting of recreation, what was it, May or September, where we met with you.
Yes,
Mr. Lois was
DPW.
invited to that one.
Correct.
Did not
our
attend to it.
CFO,
We evaluated the needs, the priorities, the spending that was necessary. DPW felt that they would try with a simpler, cheaper upgrade and to make it work. And it has worked, and it's been working fine. We didn't need to spend several $1,000s to get a system working that is now working fine. And if it did not accomplish the goal, we could always make the return to Amazon and go with the bigger system. So trying to save money and do the right thing, and it
How does
seems to
that
be
That's
working.
actually-
how does that compare to
Seems to be-
$5,000 on desks
What
for the
did I-
It's
planning
not
board?
$5,000 on desks, but also the furniture that has been in this building is the same furniture that has been here since the building was taken over by the Board of Education. And the meeting room is not planning board desks, it's meeting room tables for the conference room where the planning board, the zoning board, the Board of Health, the Environmental Commission, employees meet. They've been working on tabletops made of formica that smell, don't match, and don't provide for a good layout for the public in that room.
And I don't begrudge any
Okay.
volunteer with an
So-
I
upgrade.
said we're not
Brought that
going
up,
back
so-
and forth. That's not what this is not time to go back and forth like this. So everybody made their arguments. If you want to vote no, you're welcome to vote no.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your efforts to save the town money and to fix problems, because I know this room, there was a lot of money spent in this room and it didn't work for the longest time, and then you came in and spent a lot less money and fixed it all. So I do appreciate your efforts, because I know you know what you're doing. So, and if you're trying to save money first to see if it works, They could, the folks at Colony can always come back and ask for, tell you if it's not working.
And
So,
importantly, committee woman, I'm relying and consulting with the professionals rather than just making decisions on my own as to what needs to be spent. So I get feedback from Public Works, our engineer, our recreation director. Multiple people are weighing into this process, so it's not just what I think is best, but a collaborative approach to get the expertise and the skills of the people that we have on staff. We have an electrician on staff that worked hard to get the speakers working over at the pool at the cost that it did, without needing to spend $5,000 on a plan that none of the staff really even had an input in designing.
And the thing is also, ultimately, there was a lot of resolutions that were passed last year that authorized a lot of different things, none of which had dollar figures or a plan really in place. So what we chose to do last year is to sit down with our CFO, with all the department heads, to really iron out what can be done in just routine maintenance, which a lot of things can be done in our regular DPW routine maintenance, and some things it costs a little bit, and then some things were just completely unnecessary, where we're like, do we even really want this? Is this really necessary? So then it resulted in reaching out to various different representatives in the community and so forth, and turns out the needs weren't there, so those went way down on the priorities list. But again, it would all, the way money works, it's all priorities. That's how everything works. So like I confirm with Z that we did have multiple meetings where we sat there and addressed these things. Okay,
I
back
just
to
wanna, we'll probably talk about this a little bit too long, but there are bigger issues perhaps at play here, brought to the surface by a relatively minor issue. But I just wanna make sure the record is very clear about what happened. And what the mayor just said is bringing back my recollection a little bit, because it was some time ago. But my understanding is that this committee voted generally on a consensus that we were okay with spending up to a certain amount of money to make sure that there was appropriate sound system for Colony Pool. It wasn't like we voted on a specific project and we're gonna pay this number of dollars, and we authorized this, and this committee voted, and this was the direction, and then somebody in DPW said, nah, I don't care what those guys on the committee said, I'm gonna do something else, because that's
No.
not what that's not what happened.
That's not what happened.
I just wanna be
And it's
clear
not
about
just,
that.
and it wasn't just Colony Pool, it was a ton of things. And no, what happened was we all sat in a room with our CFO where we were able to balance the actual costs, what the money that we actually have in our budget was, and as well as the needs of whether it's Colony Pool, whether it's, whatever issue that it was. But it was a very long meeting, and we've met multiple times to just do these things. So, all right, can we go to a vote now?
Mr. Troy?
There's a vote
This is
on
to adopt.
127 payment
Yes.
bills.
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
yes,
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Felice?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're going to resolution 2023-130, the salary resolution. Can I get a motion to adopt?
so moved,
And a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I had sent in a question asking for what were the increases here and what were the percentage increases. And I didn't receive that, and I think to make a reasonable vote on a resolution for salaries, we should know the amounts of the increases and the percentage of the increases.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a request this to be pulled out as well. Salaries and wages is collectively a significant expenditure for the township. And I wonder if it's worthwhile considering a committee that addresses HR issues, most notably hiring personnel. I don't feel sufficiently informed to vote on this particular resolution because I don't have an understanding of what needs a hire is addressing. And I don't, to Committeeman Lowen's point, I don't have an appreciation for, in the event there's an increase, what the increase is. So one of the things I think about is the number in line with the market? And I have no appreciation for that. And if it's not, and in some cases it may not be, perhaps there are extenuating circumstances, perhaps there are unique qualifications this particular individual brings to the township. But again, as I said, I don't have any of that information. I have individuals' names and numbers, and my belief is the information is not sufficient for me to be voting on this particular resolution.
That said, I'd like to move that resolution 130 be tabled until the next meeting.
Z, do you want to answer his question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm sorry. What was the first part about hires? I missed that, or maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is a practice in municipal governance or not, but to the extent that we have subcommittees that deal with finance, recreation, other disciplines or...
We do have an administration committee.
Okay. And so perhaps it would be useful for the administration subcommittee to opine on, provide the rest of the committee an understanding of what's going on here, this particular resolution to table. The drivers for the hires, the drivers for the increase, what needs are being addressed.
So if I may then kind of give a big picture on this also, last year what we did is we create a salary ordinance, and that salary ordinance sets ranges for different positions. And I did a comprehensive review of that salary ordinance because there were some issues with it, and also some areas where we don't want to do a salary ordinance every year. You want to kind of have a range and have that hopefully last you 2-3 years. So that was one kind of the framework. Then this resolution actually sets the specifics for individual people with a dollar amount within those ranges. Now, this salary resolution specifically deals with non-union employees only, and employees that are either part-time, full-time salaried officials, and are either stipended or part-time non-salaried positions. This is not our entire workforce. The bulk of our workforce is actually outside of this ordinance. That's the Teamsters and the PBA. They make up the bulk of the salaries and wages line item. However, that contract, those two contracts, and this are all consistent with the budget presentation that I made in terms of our salaries and wages, what's spent in there. So when we formulated the budget in the finance committee, all these increases were projected into that budget to make sure that we still had a 0% budget. So these are not going to change that. We're still within the budget, and everybody in here actually is getting effectively less than what the union contract gets. So whether you're in the Teamsters or the PBA, nobody here, I shouldn't say nobody, very few people here are getting more than a 3% increase if you add up the numbers and you look at it. There were maybe 3 or 4 employees that got more than that, and that was because I felt that they deserved an adjustment for their longevity, and because when they were hired at a lower wage compared to what we're hiring now on the market. So without getting into a specific of people and names, I'll say, let's say we have a 10-year employee, John Doe or Jane Doe. Their salary this year might have been $50,000, but they've been working here for 5 or 10 years. But competitively, when we're advertising new positions right now, we're hiring people at $55,000 to $60,000 because that's what the market is dictating. We're not getting anybody less than that. We're seeing that with the police department. We saw that in some of the other hires. So granted, I wasn't going to be able to jump them one big leap in 1 year, but in order to, for equity, and also the folks that happen to be in that situation, majority of them were women. So I wanted to make sure that we've got equity and equality and fairness in terms of the pay scale here, because I don't think there's been a real full-scale review of salaries. So the total here, though, is the smallest percentage of what is actually driving an increase to the budget. I can't tell you the exact number off the top of my head, but if I were to add these up in the spreadsheet, it's going to amount to less than 1% of the total budget. And also in terms of salaries and wages, that's even smaller when you're looking at the PBA and the Teamsters increases. Does that help give a little context?
Yeah, and so in the event there's a new hire, and I think there is, what are the circumstances around which that determination is made?
Sure.
For example, if you look at a work chart for municipalities, got 10,000 people, 15,000 people, 20,000 people, you make certain hires, right, depending on the size of the municipality and the robustness of services, right? So if recreation is a big part of the town, then you understand that you probably have commensurate, increase in staff dedicated to that function. But so, and this is probably moving a little bit outside of this particular context, but comes back to my root issue, which is the information that's presented to those members on the committee outside of the subcommittee, I feel is lacking in order to make an informed vote.
Okay. So to the question of the new hires, so this resolution also, I specified, is only covering employees that were with us as of January 1st. So you'll notice that there are some employees in some positions that are not in this. That's because they were hired after January 1st. This is a retroactive resolution. The Teamsters, the PBA, they all get their increases based on contract, and it's been approved. So they get it whether it's January 1st, if they're out of step, or on their anniversary. This is for employees that have been with us as of January 1st, and it's a retroactive salary increase. It does not include anybody else that would be hired after, because when we hire an employee, as you'll see on this agenda and others, that appointment resolution has a specific salary that's being set, and that's also done within the range of the salary ordinance and also done within what is in the budget. So when I worked on those salary ranges, I did look at some of the things that you're talking about. The workload that's involved, and as well the people that person might be managing or supervising or overseeing. So it's the workload and also the experience of that individual. And so then when I'm drafting that offer letter, that's when I'm sending it to the mayor and Committeewoman Ewald, as far as showing them, here's what we're intending to do, here's who's going to be hired, and that is memorialized by way of that resolution for anybody that's a new hire.
Also, I want to say, we do have to rely on our staff to run day to day. We don't have the ability to work here full time and micromanage everything. We have to rely on our administrator to do his job, which is to do a lot of the hiring and firing and everything else in between. When there is a new person, what usually occurs is there's either an email to both of us or a phone call, or we'll hop on the phone real quickly, do a quick conference call. Hey, what do you guys think of this? Does this work for you guys? What do you think? And the reason why we try to make this as very easy and bipartisan and non-drama as possible, so that our staff can work and be as productive and not have to wait every single 2 weeks to make any type of move. Does that make sense? Our administrator does send very intensive emails informing the committee of, okay, this is what occurred, just to let you know, this is what occurred, filling everybody in. But the immediate, okay, we have to hire someone because we just, so-and-so just gave their notice, we have to hire someone to replace them right away. That's usually just a phone call, real quick 3-way call between us, or even a text message. Okay, can I put this out on the website to try and get some resumes? And so we're like, yeah, good, go. We got to fill that spot. That's usually the process. And then later on, once there's the drama of that kind of settles down, and that we have someone lined up that's willing to replace it, that seems to be a good fit, then our administrator usually emails the entire committee and fills everybody in. This is what occurred, and then you'll see a resolution on the agenda indicating as such. So I just want to make sure everybody was understood that that's how usually the process works.
The last piece I'll add to that whole puzzle, in terms of competitive salary data, a lot of these bigger positions we had to evaluate last year, and we did look at competitive salary data to see where we were. So we had that information, and certainly when we bring in anybody new, we're looking, clearly you have to pay where the market's paying, so you get a sense of where that competitive data is. So that's that
and
piece.
maybe we're talking too much on this one too, but I'm okay if committee member Choi wants some more time to consider this, I guess, but echoing what the mayor and Mrs. Ewald said, two things, and in addition to what Z said about equality, what a word that popped into my mind that you didn't mention was retention. And these people know what other municipalities are paying. If we're not paying it, you know, they'll take another job, and we want to retain our employees. And I recall exactly what Mrs. Ewell talked about in the context of the general budget and the salary resolution that was adopted last year, doing that analysis. And to the mayor's point, I for one, you know, whatever floats your boat, Mike, I guess, but I don't necessarily view the role of this committee as being like reviewing resumes and
Right.
hiring people. You know, like we have staff that we have to place our trust and confidence in to manage that sort of stuff, subject to our oversight.
I totally agree. Additionally, I mean, you do get the emails in regards to this. You also get the resolutions and the agendas ahead of time. Maybe next time, you know, you might want to sit down, meet with our administrator and ask them, you know, why did these people get raises? If you want to go into that details.
The
Well,
question
the
that
issue
I,
have is the information out of a subcommittee to the committee, I feel is inadequate. Across
What
the board.
information are you looking to get out of the administrative subcommittee?
Well, out of any subcommittee, if you're making hiring decisions, for example, I would assume the other members of the committee would be
You get
provided
an email.
information before before it's already drafted into a resolution.
You always get an email explaining.
There
the
were
cir-
some discussions that were had, not all.
Zia is very, very good about always drafting an email explaining what had occurred after the fact. I mean, do you want to get into the nitty gritty of actually the reading resumes and determining whether or not?
No, I think reading resumes and voting on a resolution on a table of this, and there's, I would argue, multiple levels of involvement, right? So reading resumes, I would say, is absolute granular. I have no intention of getting involved, because I would leave that to our staff.
So it sounds to me, I'm not trying to cut it,
What I'm saying is probably a step before this, where it's brought.
The step before this is when the administrator emails the entire committee explaining what had happened and always says, let me know if you have any questions, meaning email him back with questions or pick up the phone and call him with questions.
and the question that I sent in is exactly, this is the very long-winded wording that I used, that is, please provide the dollar amount and percentage increases over the last year for each position in this resolution, referring to resolution 130. That
Okay.
was literally the email, and I still don't have that information from all of this discussion. Just the increases and the percentage of increase for each of these positions. I think that's a modicum of information that you would need to make a vote. I agree in part with most of what Mike's also saying. He's just simply saying, even if you say, we're saying, oh yeah, you are informed, you are well informed, and there's some reminders, he might think, yep, I am, oh yeah, I was told this and that. But that doesn't mean that that's the best way to present information for an oversight. There
I
has
don't
to be-
understand what more you want, because
I'm specifically asking for the dollar amount and percentage increases over last year for each position in this resolution. It's a table, there could just be another 2 columns, and we would be done with this
That's
conversation.
that's an additional exercise that you're putting on our staff, is what you're, is the
It
thing.
had to be
But
done
my
to come up
point
with
is-
these numbers
Is that
anyway.
my point is that it's very confusing to me. I don't understand why either one of you are not okay with this process, because it's not a partisan process, it's not, more importantly, it's not a micromanaging process, because we have no choice but to rely on our staff. Our staff are here every single day in the weeds of everything. We don't get in the weeds of it, and I think it sounds like what you're asking is to get into the weeds of it. So like you keep saying over and over again that you want more reporting from the administrative subcommittee. You get an email anytime someone is hired or terminated and explain, or resigned, and with an explanation of what occurred. At that time, you can pick up the phone, you can respond to the email, or you can wait until you get the agenda packet and see that the resolution's on it, and pick up the phone and ask the questions to our administrator, or send him an email as well. Like, there's so many opportunities to ask these questions and answer any questions that you want. I don't think it's right to sit there and wait until the absolute last minute when we're trying to approve a salary resolution. I just don't think that's right.
I see Greg, you have your
Yeah.
hand up there, so you might have something to add, but I just wanna chime in here too, which is, maybe I'm trying to be a little bit of a moderator here. I feel like we might be talking about different things, you know, there's an issue about hiring and firing and stuff, but as far as this particular ordinance, you see it does look like a lot of information, and I realize there were some emails floating around. It sounds to me like what Mr. Lois and Mr. Choi are both saying is that the greater committee might be informed in the context of this particular resolution containing that much data on it by, like, you know, a very, very brief presentation from either Z or the subcommittee, or even a short memo containing this is our resolution, this is what it was last year, this is where it's different. I mean, is that basically what you're asking for?
That captures my sentiment, certainly. I won't speak for Mr. Choi. But I also agree with Mr. Choi's other points about hiring and some more transparency in that process. If that's a word he didn't use and I'm misusing it, that's the summarization I could come up with.
So practically speaking, how many votes do you need for a salary resolution?
Any of the resolution, these resolutions are only going to require three.
Okay, and is there any implications for tabling? Are people not gonna get their increase until,
It won't happen until July. In other words, if you don't, you know, if this isn't adopted today, it will just wait until the July meeting.
And
But
it's
you said it was
retroactive.
retroactive.
Correct.
So we get our retro in August rather than July, which we usually get in April?
I don't know when you usually get it, but, was there something else that you want to say about procedure?
Oh, I was just gonna point out that last year's salary resolution is publicly available on the website, has been on the website since last year. So
I mean-
that's available to anyone that has an internet connection.
Literally, all the information is out there. This is not done behind closed doors by any means. This is not the first time everyone's seeing this as it's being portrayed. You've gotten tons of emails on these items. So I'm really kind of confused on the sentiment of that this is all brand new and it's not enough information. Then pick up the phone or shoot an email, and we can get that.
Which I did.
Like I've already said, you shoot 1,000 emails.
okay, the reality is we need 3 votes, and I'm
Yeah.
not inclined to make the staff wait another month for their money when there's really no substantial concerns. I mean, you may get the nitty-gritty, and you might have little, small concerns, but there's no substantial concerns. So I'm fine with moving forward with a vote now if everybody else is.
I am too.
Mike, are you satisfied that I think we have a consensus on this committee that maybe next year, for example, we could have a little more fulsome, you know, I'm not inclined to vote no on this for a number of reasons involved, including the staff and everything, but I wanna make sure that everybody's satisfied. And the point is a good one, that the information requested about how this is different from last year is publicly available. But I would nonetheless ask you, Z, if you would please provide it to the committee, you know, sometime later this week, just so we have it.
Yes.
But I'm inclined to vote for this.
Thank
All
you.
right, let's go to a roll call.
Mr. Choi,
I abstain.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes,
Mr. Lewis,
Abstain.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
Yes.
and Mayor Flees.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to resolution 2023-132, certifying the review of the audit. Is there a motion to adopt?
so moved.
Is there a second? Anyone? Anyone?
You can second.
All right, I will second. Now, is there discussion?
I'm sorry, Mayor Felice, what,
Resolution
132.
132.
The audit review.
So I called out resolution 132 and 133, which all have to do with the action plan and this review of the annual audit. And it says in here, of course, this is not the audit itself, but it says a copy has been received by each member of the governing body. I specifically requested a copy of the audit, and I have not received a copy of the audit.
You
Also-
received
Everybody
it by
got it,
email?
June 7th.
I understand, but okay, so, and it may be that I have missed it, and I did ask in the email if I missed it, please let me know, but it's also not available online. So, and typically that audit is available online in March or April. As of 3 o'clock today, not available online.
Everybody received. Yeah. It's not allowed to be. And everybody on the committee got it on June 7th.
Okay. Well, then,
So-
it's very possible, I did ask the question, and I had received no response on that, and so.
June 7th. I
Okay,
have it on my email
that's-
too.
That's beautiful, that answers my question, and I'd be happy to vote for both.
Great, can we get a roll call, Greg?
Can we do both at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, this is, so then do I need to edit the motion on the table?
Stacy.
Are you okay with that?
So then
Mrs.
it's a
Yolden?
motion to
Oh, is it my
adopt,
motion? Do I take back my motion?
Do you want to amend your motion? to
Amend your
add
motion.
I will
133?
amend my motion.
To include 133.
Resolution 133.
and then I'll second
Okay.
that.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
Mr. Lotus,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
Yes.
and Mayor Flees.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now, can I get a motion to adopt, resolution 137, amending the 2023 budget? Motion to adopt?
So moved.
A second? Okay, and discussion?
Yeah, I had pulled this out as, I had a question. The resolution indicates the amount is 25,819. The finance report indicates that it was 17,543. And then we had previously seen a number of 16,500. Is this different than the settlement funds, the J&J settlement funds? Is this different than that, or is this the same and it's just been increasing? And I had asked this question by email as well. Please explain.
We get installments of this payment. It's coming in installments, it's not, all at once.
Okay, so is
That was
the,
part of the settlement.
okay, so the finance report indicating that it was 17.5, and then is it growing to 25, or is this an additional 25?
It
on
could,
top
I
of the
believe it will go up to like 100,000, but it's in installments.
No, I think
So
his
it's out of
question is,
May.
did we receive 17 and now we received an additional 25, or it says has received?
That's
I read
total
that
as of
in
May.
total.
That's in total as of May.
Yeah, so the amount in the report is as of May, the amount in the resolution is the aggregate, none of these are in addition to, it's not like an accumulating, but the settlement amount is gonna keep increasing through 2030.
Wow.
So this is an aggregated amount, right? So this would be, is,
The amount in the in resolution 137 is an aggregate amount.
okay, thank you for that.
Can I get a roll call, Greg?
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald,
Yes.
and Mr. Lotus,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
Yes.
Mayor Flees.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we're going to resolution, 147, amending capital budget.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Any discussion?
Yeah,
Alright,
so, would we need to revisit this resolution if the capital budget gets amended to include, a monicum of funds, any amount of funds for recreation, or get the capital budget in its final adoption gets revised in any amount? That was-
I mean,
That's for you, Pete.
yeah.
You'd have to, I'm sorry, yes, you'd have to pass another resolution with any increase, if it's capital amended.
Okay, so then,
So the two go with each other, so you're gonna, you would pass this one with the thought process of, on second reading, the ordinance gets passed. If you're gonna amend that ordinance, to increase, you're gonna have to reintroduce it and start the process over, because that would be considered not an amendment, like an administrative amendment, but a substantial change to the ordinance.
so we're basically locked into the ordinance then?
No, you can vote it down.
Or change,
You-
again, you can
well,
add another
you-
ordinance.
Yeah, you'd vote it down, and then you'd reintroduce an ordinance with whatever changes you want.
When you say an ordinance, you're referring to the thing that was introduced,
Capital
right,
ordinance. You
that
can
we discussed
introduce-
at great length. I just wanna make sure the record is
Yeah,
clear.
you can
for-
introduce 12 capital ordinances a year if you really wanted to. If you wanted to add, without getting into more back and forth, making capital improvements for recreation does not even require necessarily another ordinance, and may not even require an amendment of the capital budget.
So, yeah, that was
depending on
good.
where the funds are coming from.
Yeah, so going back to my closing question at the end of the last discussion, does adopting this resolution in any way impede our ability to, at some point next week, next month, or whenever, go, finalize the Mountain View netting or any other project?
No, you just, if it was in the capital, you just have another, twin resolution to
Yeah.
parrot that, what's in the ordinance.
Okay, can we go to a vote?
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes,
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
And Mayor Fleece.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And now, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 148, awarding contract for calling tennis improvements?
so moved.
Is there a second?
100% record for movements.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anybody with a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and discussion?
Yeah, the discussion I have on this is just, these two capital ordinances that we're pulling from are obviously, they're capital ordinances from the past. So these are capital budgets that were previously passed, capital ordinance that were previously passed in past years, right, for those folks at home, meaning those committees said, hey, we should put some money, make it available to spend for capital improvements. To say that we're spending that money this year, and that counts towards spending capital and making capital improvements this year, is really just riding the shoulders of giants, which is something we're really fortunate to do in Chatham Township a lot because of the great place that we have here. But those were decisions made by past committees that we're riding on. This is not investing in recreation even the way that it was done before. In fact, the fact that these ordinances exist, and that's where the fund is coming from, should only double down and re-amplify for you the idea that we need to set aside some capital for recreation, some capital, so that it can be used this year. And as these things go, as I mentioned, this Colony Pool tennis improvement is something that it's been an ongoing in bidding alone for over a year. And so I would just emphasize that to this committee, that's what the purpose of these, that's what the purpose of setting aside current capital is. I heard it said earlier that, oh, well, hey, we are making capital improvements. We're making capital improvements based on what someone else decided that it was prudent to do. That previous committees decided this is a prudent idea to set aside some capital for recreation, not none.
Okay, that's just not true. Can we go to a vote?
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes,
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Fleece.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, I guess we're opening the floor to the next hearing of the second hearing of citizens this evening. I'm not gonna read that whole thing again, so if anybody wants to speak, come to the microphone and raise their hand.
No hands
The
raised.
floor is open. No, all right, so then we're gonna close the hearing of citizens, and can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a
You can do
second?
it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. I feel like we need to hire a full-time person to just answer committee people's questions and
Recording
emails
stopped.
at all times, because our staff really does not have the ability to do that.